It is minus 30 degrees outside, the kind of cold that freezes your eyelashes in seconds. The kind that archive engines, cracks pipes, and turns exposed skin into a medical emergency within minutes. And yet, right here, right now, there's a man standing in front of a structure that cost him less than $500. And inside that structure, it is warm enough to sleep, eat, cook, and survive the entire Alaskan winter in comfort. No mortgage, no contractor, no permit nightmare, no waiting 6 months for materials to ship to a remote location. Just $500, a few weeks of work, and one of the most underrated building techniques ever invented by man. I am going to show you exactly how this works. Every material, every step, every dollar. And by the end of this video, you will understand why this simple structure outperforms shelters that cost 50 times more, and why it stays 67 degrees warmer than the outside air without any modern heating system doing the heavy lifting. Stay with me, because what you are about to learn could genuinely save your life, or at the very least, save you an enormous amount of money. Let's start with why most people fail when they try to build in the Alaskan wilderness. They think like city builders. They price lumber at Home Depot rates. They assume they can run to the hardware store twice a week. They design cabins that require a foundation crew, a framing crew, and a roofing crew. And then reality hits. Remote Alaska does not care about your building schedule. Materials cost 3 times more when you factor in freight. Skilled labor is almost impossible to find. And the window between passable ground and frozen ground is brutally short. The average small cabin build in rural Alaska costs between $40,000 and $90,000 by the time you finish it. That assumes no major surprises. In Alaska, there are always major surprises. So the men who actually survive and thrive out here, the hunters, the homesteaders, the off-grid builders who have been doing this for decades, they think differently. They do not fight the environment. They work with it. And the structure you're looking at right now is the single best example of that philosophy I have ever encountered. This is a Quonset hut, and it is not just a cheap building. It is one of the most intelligently designed cold weather structures ever created. Here is a quick history lesson that matters more than you think. During World War II, the United States military faced a logistical nightmare. They needed to build thousands of durable, functional structures across some of the most hostile environments on the planet: jungle islands, Arctic outposts, scorching deserts. And they needed to do it fast with minimal materials, using men who were soldiers, not carpenters. The solution was a Quonset hut, developed in 1941 at Quonset Point Naval Air Station in Rhode Island. The design was elegantly simple: a half-cylinder of corrugated steel, bolted together in sections, that could be erected by a small team in a single day. No complex framing, no specialized tools, no foundation beyond a flat, level surface. The military built over 170,000 of them. They used them as barracks, hospitals, storage facilities, and command centers. They stood up to typhoons in the Pacific. They held firm in the frozen tundra. They proved beyond any doubt that the arch is one of the strongest structural shapes in existence. Decades later, the same principles apply, and a man with $500 and 2 good hands can build one that will outlast almost anything a mainstream contractor would put up for 10 times the price. Here's why the arch works so well in cold climates specifically. Snow is heavy. A flat roof accumulates snow load until something fails. A pitched roof sheds some of it. But an arch, a true semicircular arch, causes snow to slide off naturally from both sides simultaneously. The structure never bears the full vertical load of accumulated snowfall because the geometry constantly redirects that weight outward and downward into the ground. That is not luck. That is physics working in your favor. The same principle applies to wind. A blunt wall catches wind and transfers force directly into frame. An arch deflects wind around its curve, dramatically reducing the lateral stress on the entire structure. In a place where wind chill turns -10 into -40, having a building that shrugs off gusts rather than fighting them is not a luxury. It is a survival requirement. Now, let us talk about the $500, because this is where most videos either lie to you or bury the real numbers in vague language. We are not doing that here. The corrugated metal arch panels are your biggest single cost if you are sourcing new panels, Budget around $150 to $200 depending on the size of your hut and your location. However, and this is important, corrugated roofing panels show up at farm auctions, salvage yards, and rural Craigslist listings constantly. Men who are demolishing old barns, grain silos, and equipment sheds often sell usable panels for almost nothing just to avoid hauling them away. If you are patient and you search within a reasonable radius, you can often source these for $50 or less. The log wall at the front face is your second major component. This is a structural end wall that closes off the open mouth of the arch. The logs you see in this build were sourced directly from the surrounding property. If you are building in a forested area, which most Alaskan build sites are, you have free structural material standing all around you. You need to fell, delimb, and notch them, but the material cost is zero. If you are buying milled lumber instead, budget $60 to $80 for the front face framing. The wood stove is the heart of the entire heating system. A basic cast iron box stove from a surplus store or a used equipment dealer runs between $40 and $90. The chimney pipe sections cost another $20 to $40. Do not cut corners on the chimney. A poorly fitted chimney in a metal structure is a fire risk. Take the time to seal every joint properly and install a proper cap to prevent backdraft in heavy wind. For the door, a salvaged solid core wooden door costs almost nothing at a Habitat for Humanity restore or a demolition salvage yard. Budget $0 to $30. The window you see in this build, that small, deep-set glass pane, adds both natural light and a critical psychological element. Humans need to see outside. A windowless shelter in an Alaskan winter creates a crushing sense of confinement that degrades mental resilience faster than almost any other factor. Budget $20 to $40 for a small double-pane salvage window. Concrete for a simple pad foundation or gravel compacted into a stable base costs $30 to $50. Fasteners, bolts, hinges, caulk, and weather stripping round out the materials at another $30 to $50. Add it all up with new or near-new materials, and you land between $350 and $500. Source aggressively from salvage and auctions, and you can do it for under $250. The $500 figure is the honest upper ceiling, not the inflated estimate. Now let us build it, step by step, in the order it actually happens on the ground. Site selection is more important than most people realize. You want a location that is naturally sheltered from prevailing wind direction, a slight hillside, a tree line, a natural berm, but not so enclosed that you lose your solar exposure for the few hours of winter daylight Alaska provides. South-facing orientation matters. Even weak winter sun hitting your front wall adds passive heat gained to that window and through the door when it is briefly open. A south-facing entrance also means the stove smoke rises and dissipates away from the structure rather than settling back over the roof. Level your ground. This sounds obvious, but it is a step men rush, and it costs them later. A warped, uneven base means the arch panels do not align cleanly. Gaps open up along the bottom edge, and cold air has a direct infiltration path. Spend extra time here. Compact the gravel or pour your small concrete perimeter with obsessive attention to level. Erect the arch panels starting from one end. Each corrugated section bolts to the next along the ridgeline and down the sides. Work with a partner for this phase. Holding arch sections in position while threading bolts is a two-man job. As each section locks in, the structure becomes progressively more rigid. By the time you have 4 or 5 sections connected, the arch is self-supporting, and you can feel the engineering working. It becomes almost impossible to flex or distort. That rigidity comes entirely from the geometry, not from the weight of the material. Once the arch is standing, build your front log wall. Notch and stack the logs tightly, chinking the gaps with moss clay or commercial log chinking compound. Frame your door opening with square timber, so the door hangs plumb. Frame your window opening above into the side of the door to maximize wall strength while still admitting light. This log wall is doing double duty. It is both structural and thermal mass. Those logs absorb heat from the stove during the day and release it slowly through the night. This is passive heating, and it is extraordinarily effective. Install the wood stove before you close up any gaps. Position it slightly offset from center toward the back of the space. This distributes heat more evenly and gives you clear working room near the door. Run the chimney pipe up through the arch at an angle, sealing the penetration point with high-temperature silicone and a proper metal flashing collar. The chimney needs to exit high enough above the arch peak to create proper draft. Too short and the draw is poor. Too long, and you risk chimney instability in high wind. A height of 2 feet above the arch peak is a reliable standard. Stack your firewood under the shelter of the arch overhang on either side of the front door opening, exactly as you see in this build. This serves 3 functions simultaneously. It protects your fuel supply from snow and ice. It adds insulating mass to the sides of front opening, reducing cold air infiltration around the door perimeter. And it creates a natural windbreak that reduces the chilling effect on anyone entering or exiting the hut. Weatherproof every seam where the arch panels meet the ground. Use spray foam insulation first, then seal over with roofing caulk. Cold air infiltration at the base of the arch is the most common failure point in these builds. Address it thoroughly. Now here's the part that will make you understand why 67 degrees warmer is not an exaggeration. Most people think of insulation as something you stuff inside walls. Fiberglass bats, spray foam, rigid foam board. All of that is effective. But the reason this structure performs so dramatically in cold conditions is not just insulation. It is a combination of 4 interlocking physical principles working simultaneously. First, volume efficiency. Heat rises. In a structure with a vaulted or flat ceiling, that rising warm air pools at the top of the space where you are not sleeping or sitting. In a low-volume arch structure, the highest point of the interior is only about 8 feet above the floor. There is nowhere for heat to escape to. The warm air stays in the breathing zone, which is where you need it. Second, thermal mass. The log front wall is not just a structural element. Logs are significant thermal mass, the ability to absorb heat slowly and release it slowly. During the hours when the stove is burning hot, the logs are soaking up heat like a battery. When the stove dies down overnight, those logs slowly release stored heat back into the space. This is the same principle used in traditional Finnish saunas, Russian masonry heaters, and southwestern adobe construction. Mass delays temperature swings. The interior of this hut does not plummet the moment the fire drops. It coasts. Third, arch geometry and air sealing. The curved metal surface of the arch has almost no flat sections where cold air can pool in stagnant pockets and conduct through. Conduction, heat transferring through a surface, requires contact. The curved surface minimizes contact area with still cold air and encourages any air that does contact the surface to keep moving rather than sitting and pulling heat from the interior. Fourth, the wood stove output relative to the space volume. A standard small box wood stove produces between 20,000 and 40,000 BTUs per hour at moderate burn. In a Quonset hut of this size, roughly 12 feet wide by 20 feet long, you have approximately 1,900 cubic feet of space to heat. That same stove in a standard 800 square foot cabin with 8-foot ceilings will be working against 6,400 cubic feet. It is heating 1/3 the volume. The temperature rise is proportionally dramatic and reaches equilibrium much faster than any conventional structure. These 4 factors compound each other. The result is not 67 degrees warmer by accident. It is 67 degrees warmer by design. Let's be honest about the limitations, because a video that only shows you the winds is not actually useful. Condensation is the primary enemy of a metal arch structure. When warm interior air contacts the cold metal surface of the arch from the inside, moisture condenses out of the air and runs down the interior walls. In a dry climate, this is a minor nuisance. In a humid Alaskan winter, it can be significant enough to drip on your gear, create ice buildup on the metal, and degrade your insulation if you have added any to the interior. The solution is ventilation. A small ridge vent at the peak of the arch allows humid interior air to escape before it reaches the dew point on the metal. Do not seal the structure completely airtight. A small, controlled air exchange prevents condensation without sacrificing significant heat. Firewood supply is not optional. This structure runs on wood. If you run out of dry firewood, you lose your heating advantage rapidly. Plan for a minimum 3-cord supply for a full Alaskan winter. Stack it in the previous spring, so it seasons through the summer. Wetwood produces less heat, more creosote in your chimney, and more smoke than dry wood. Creosote buildup in a metal chimney is a chimney fire risk. Inspect and sweep your chimney monthly during heavy use season. The one-room footprint means this hut is most effective as a single-season camp, a hunting base, a gear and equipment shelter, or a short-term survival structure. If you want a permanent year-round residence, this is a starting point, not an ending point. The good news is that the arch structure can be extended longitudinally. You simply bolt additional arch sections onto the existing end and extend your floor. Men have turned 20-foot Quonset huts into 60-foot homesteads by adding sections over several seasons as budget allowed. The modular nature of the design is one of its most underappreciated advantages. If you're planning to upgrade this structure for longer habitation, here's a priority order for where to spend your next dollars. Interior insulation on the arch panels is your highest return investment. A layer of closed-cell spray foam applied to the interior surface of the metal eliminates both the condensation problem and dramatically improves the thermal resistance of the shell. A single 2-inch layer of closed-cell foam transforms a metal arch from a semi-insulated structure to a genuinely well-insulated one. Budget $200 to $400 for a DIY spray foam kit sufficient for a structure this size. A sleeping loft built over the rear third of the hut captures the naturally rising warm air and puts your sleeping area in the warmest part of the interior. Simple timber framing, a plywood deck, and a short ladder turn wasted overhead space into the most comfortable sleeping position in the structure. Budget $80 to $120 for materials. A small photovoltaic solar panel and a battery bank give you LED lighting and the ability to charge devices and run a small radio or communication device. A 100-watt panel and a modest lithium battery bank cost around $150 to $200 and dramatically improve quality of life during the long Alaskan winter nights. This is the upgrade that shifts the structure from a survival shelter to a livable space. A secondary rocket mass heater built into a back wall position dramatically extends your heat-holding capability overnight. Rocket mass heaters burn wood with extraordinary efficiency, roughly 3 to 4 times more efficiently than a standard box stove, and their thermal mass body radiates heat for 8 to 12 hours after the last fuel load. This is how Alaskan homesteaders maintain comfortable interior temperatures through -40 nights without waking every 2 hours to feed a fire. Every man who has built one of these and lived in it through a full Alaskan winter says the same thing afterward. He says he wishes he had done it sooner, not because it is luxurious. It is not because it is spacious. It is not, but because it works. It works with the environment instead of against it. It gives you shelter, warmth, and security at a cost that almost anyone can afford. It requires skill, patience, and physical effort, but it rewards all three with something that no expensive contractor-built cabin can give you, which is the deep satisfaction of knowing that you built it, you understand it, and you can fix anything that goes wrong with it. The man standing in front of that structure in the snow is not showing off a luxury build. He is showing you the result of $500, a sound design principle that is over 80 years old, and a commitment to figuring it out rather than waiting for perfect conditions. Perfect conditions do not exist in Alaska. They do not exist anywhere that matters. What exists is the willingness to start, to select your site, price your materials, make your first cut, and erect your first arch panel. Everything else follows from that first action. This is the shelter I would build. This is the one that makes sense when the temperature is dropping, the budget is tight, and the only option is to solve the problem yourself. Now you know exactly how to do it.